Iran-US-Israel war expands into Lebanon front, raising regional tensions. The Middle East is on the brink of one of the most dangerous escalations in decades as the ongoing conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States expands into Lebanon. What began as a confrontation primarily focused on the Gulf region and Iran's strategic sites has now broadened into multiple theaters of war, involving militant groups, regional armies, and civilians who find themselves caught in the crossfire. The latest development sees Hezbollah, the Iran-backed Lebanese militant organization, entering the conflict on Iran's side, launching attacks across northern Israel. In retaliation, Israel has carried out heavy airstrikes across southern Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah infrastructure, military positions, and suspected command centers. This marks a dangerous escalation, extending the battlefield beyond its original scope and threatening regional stability on a much larger scale. The roots of the current crisis can be traced back to rising tensions between Iran and Western powers, particularly the United States and Israel. Disagreements over Iran's nuclear ambitions, regional influence, and support for militant groups in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq have contributed to an environment where even small provocations can escalate into full-scale military engagements. The conflict intensified when the United States and Israel conducted targeted strikes on Iranian-linked infrastructure in the Gulf, prompting Iran to retaliate with missile and drone attacks on U.S. bases, allied positions, and strategic shipping routes. These events have disrupted trade, caused spikes in oil prices, and set the stage for further escalation. Now, with Hezbollah actively joining the confrontation, the war has entered a new and far more dangerous phase, drawing Lebanon, a country already struggling with economic collapse, political instability, and social unrest, directly into a regional conflict it was trying to avoid. Hezbollah has long maintained a strong military presence in southern Lebanon, controlling areas near the Israeli border and operating with considerable autonomy. Backed by Iran, the group has access to rockets, drones, and sophisticated military technology. Their entry into the conflict has fundamentally changed the battlefield. Hezbollah's attacks include long-range rocket barrages, drone incursions, and coordinated strikes on Israeli border towns. While Hezbollah frames these actions as a defensive measure to protect Lebanon and support Iranian allies, many critics argue the group is dragging the nation into a war it cannot afford. This has sparked internal criticism in Lebanon. Political factions, ordinary citizens, and local media have questioned Hezbollah's authority to conduct military operations independently, arguing that these actions violate Lebanon's sovereignty and risk plunging the entire country into chaos. The Lebanese government has publicly declared Hezbollah's unilateral attacks illegal, demanding that all armed operations be brought under state control. In response to Hezbollah's expansion of hostilities, Israel has intensified air and artillery strikes targeting Hezbollah strongholds, supply depots, and command centers in southern Lebanon. Israeli officials have stated that these measures are necessary to protect northern border communities from rocket attacks and prevent further escalation. The Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, have mobilized additional troops to northern Israel, placed missile defense systems on high alert, and conducted joint exercises with allied forces in preparation for potential ground operations. This heightened military activity signals Israel's readiness to escalate further if attacks continue. Analysts warn that while Israel aims to contain the conflict to Lebanon, the complex geography and the presence of civilians in urban areas make precision operations extremely challenging. Mistakes could result in significant civilian casualties, further inflaming regional tensions. The expansion of war into Lebanon has exacerbated an already dire humanitarian situation. Civilians living in affected areas face constant threats from airstrikes, artillery fire, and rocket attacks.
Thousands have been displaced from their homes, seeking shelter in schools, community centers, or temporary refugee sites. Hospitals, already stretched thin due to Lebanon's ongoing economic and health crises, are overwhelmed by casualties. Medical supplies are scarce, and the risk of disease and malnutrition is rising as families are forced to live in crowded conditions with limited access to clean water and food. International humanitarian organizations have issued urgent appeals for aid and intervention. They warn that if the fighting continues unchecked, Lebanon could experience a full-scale humanitarian disaster, with ripple effects extending to neighboring countries such as Syria and Jordan. The conflict's expansion into Lebanon raises serious concerns for regional security. Analysts warn that further escalation could draw in additional countries, including Syria, Iraq, and even factions within Yemen, creating a multi-front regional war. Energy markets are particularly vulnerable. The Strait of Hormuz, through which a significant portion of global oil passes, remains a potential target for attacks. Even minor disruptions can lead to dramatic increases in oil prices, affecting economies worldwide. Global investors are closely monitoring the situation, as prolonged instability could trigger a crisis in international trade and energy supply. The conflict also threatens diplomatic relations. Countries across the Arab world, Europe, and Asia are calling for restraint and attempting to mediate a reduction in hostilities. However, deep-seated mistrust between Iran, Israel, and the United States complicates negotiations. Global leaders have expressed concern about the escalating war in Lebanon. The United Nations has issued calls for immediate ceasefires and humanitarian corridors, while countries like France, Germany, and Russia are urging diplomatic dialogue. The United States and Israel have emphasized their commitment to protecting their interests and allies, while Iran has warned of severe consequences for any continued attacks on its allies or territory. This geopolitical deadlock makes a swift resolution unlikely, leaving the region on edge as fighting continues. Potential scenarios moving forward. Military experts and political analysts predict several possible scenarios. Limited escalation. The conflict could remain primarily between Hezbollah and Israel, with periodic missile exchanges and no major ground invasion. Regional expansion. Other countries or militias may become involved, creating multiple fronts and drawing in Syria, Iraq, or even Jordan. International mediation. Global diplomatic pressure could force a ceasefire, leading to negotiations that stabilize the region temporarily. Prolonged conflict. Fighting continues for months, devastating Lebanon, disrupting the Middle East economy, and causing severe humanitarian crises. Each scenario carries grave implications for regional stability, global energy security, and international politics. The expansion of the Iran-US-Israel conflict into Lebanon represents a dangerous escalation with far-reaching consequences. Civilians, regional governments, and global markets are facing uncertainty as the conflict grows in intensity and scope. While diplomatic efforts remain essential, the deep mistrust and historical grievances between the parties make a peaceful resolution challenging. The coming days and weeks are likely to determine whether Lebanon can avoid becoming a prolonged battlefield or whether the conflict spreads further, affecting millions across the Middle East and the world. This is a defining moment for the region, and the stakes could not be higher, militarily, politically, and humanitarianly.